Hey, happy Monday! Come on in, pull up a chair, the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. Or I like to refer myself as the Grand Poobah, like straight out of the Flintstones, right? So, anyway, it is a new week, it is a new month, so time to kick it with some new games. Tonight is Monday, July 1st. This is episode 325 of the Daily Dope. How about that? So if this is your first time swinging in to check out the show, let me point out this is a very, very casual live stream. I basically share some tabletop gaming news, usually have an unboxing or a page through if it's an RPG book, or possibly a review like I've got tonight, because tonight I am reviewing Sorcerer from White Wizard Games. I just want to keep going, Sorcerer, as opposed to just saying Sorcerer. So that is my review. That will be coming up in just a bit. So because this is a live stream, do want to point out there is chat available on YouTube. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, or maybe you've got a question, or maybe there's something about Sorcerer you want to get a closer look at, by all means, chime in. I will respond. So, also, do want to point out, if you like the show, if you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. If you check out some of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel and you dig those, by all means, please subscribe. If you do subscribe, don't forget to ring that little bell, because not only will it tell you when I've got a new video uploaded, because there are videos outside of just the Daily Dope that go up on the channel, it will also notify you when the stream goes live within about 5 minutes or so. It's not instantaneous. So, also want to point out, if you like thegaminggang.com, if you like the Gaming Gang channel, if you dig the Daily Dope, why not tell a friend? In fact, tell 2 friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it is warm, it is humid here in the Chicagoland area. It is a bit cooler down here in the Duct Tape Studios, but it's still awfully humid down here. But we'll just deal with it. We'll just work our way through it. Anyway, I've got a good amount of tabletop gaming news today. I got some really interesting stuff going on. I've got a good mix of different sorts of games as well. But I do know there are folks out there who do not like the tabletop gaming news. If that happens to be the case, please take a look at the show notes below, and that way there are timestamps in the show notes. You can skip right ahead and hit the review running if you would like. For some strange reason, we're getting some dropped frames here. Getting a bunch of drop frames. Okay, looks like we're kind of evening out a little bit. Fingers crossed. That was interesting. Doing some, the computer's got a refreshing some things too. Oh, it better not be some stupid Windows update saying that this computer's been on for hours and I've been working on stuff down here. Why Microsoft? Anyway, so let's pop on into the news, because it's been a long time coming. But the 1979 cult Avalon Hill Games classic Dune is preparing for an updated return. It's coming from Gale Force 9, and I've got the dope. Imagine you can control the forces of a noble family, guild, or religious order on a barren planet which is the only source of the most valuable substance in the known universe. Imagine you can rewrite the script for one of the most famous science fiction books of all time. Welcome to the acclaimed 40-year-old board game, which allows you to recreate the incredible world of Frank Herbert's Dune. In Dune, you'll become the leader of one of 6 great factions. Each wishes to control the most valuable resource in the universe, melange, the mysterious spice only found at great cost on the planet Dune. Well, that's not really the planet's name. Arrakis. Arrakis is the name of the planet. Took me a second to remember that. As Duke Leto Atreides says, all fades before melange. A handful of spice will buy a home on Tupile. It cannot be manufactured. It must be mined on Arrakis. It is unique, and it has true geriatric properties. And without melange, space travel would be impossible. Only by ingesting the addictive drug can the guild steersman continue to experience visions of the future, enabling them to plot a safe path through hyperspace. Who will control Dune? Become one of the characters and their forces from the book, and you decide. Yes, you. Dune is for 2 to 6 players, ages 12 and up, plays in 2 to 3 hours. Keep in mind, this was an Avalon Hill game, so it's going to have a long gameplay, which is great. I'm pumped. It's also going to carry an MSRP of $50 when it arrives on August 24th. I am awfully curious to see if Gale Force 9 Games is going to have Dune at Gen Con. I would think they should. I would think they should have it at Gen Con, seeing that it's releasing on the 24th of August. So there's Gen Con releases that aren't coming out in retail until September, and there's a couple I've seen that early October. So I would think we'll be able to see Dune, and this is one that I am definitely looking forward to checking out, because it looks pretty nice. It looks like they've done a really nice revamp on the game itself. I don't think they've done a lot of changes to the gameplay itself. I'm sure they've tweaked some things, but it's not a complete rehaul or reimagining of the game. Okay, so Mantic Games is launching the Walking Dead Call to Arms miniatures game this summer. It's a new tabletop miniatures game based on the Walking Dead comic book series. Not the show, it is the comic. And I've got the dope. First is the rulebook. This is the backbone of the Call to Arms releases. The awesome new rulebook by All Out War designer Mark Latham. Inside you'll find all the new rules, 7 scenarios, and lists for 2 starter factions, Rick's gang and the Governor's Woodbury. I would think that's the Woodbury Army, wouldn't you say that? MSRP for the rulebook is $19.99. Just like All Out War, characters in Call to Arms have their own stat cards. This makes it much easier to see their various stats and special abilities, rather than having to flick through a rulebook. If you're a goody-goody survivor, then you'll need to pick up the Lawful faction cards. The MSRP on that is $19.99. If you prefer to rule through fear, then you'll definitely need to get the Ruthless faction cards. Or you'll just beat up one of your minions and tell them to buy you one. MSRP is $19.99 for that deck as well. Equipment has changed compared to All Out War to take out some of those particularly nasty combos. And that means it's time to pick up a new equipment deck to use as a handy reference when creating your gangs. Don't worry, all the equipment is listed in the rulebook too. That will also carry an MSRP of $19.99. So how about we start talking about the miniatures? Fancy starting a new gang? Rick's group contains a selection of survivors to get your faction up and running. The MSRP on that is $39.99. Don't fancy playing as the good guys? The Governor's Woodbury Army is here to crush the opposition. MSRP on that is also $39.99. You can boost your chosen gang with the addition of the Prisoner Booster Pack. Luckily, the prisoners aren't fussy who they work for, so they'll make perfect allies for Rick or the Governor. The MSRP on them is $19.99. One of the terrifying additions to Call to Arms is the concept of the Walker Herd. Although not a threat on their own, if walkers group together, they form a formidable and almost unstoppable herd. This pack includes a selection of walkers and a 90mm by 60mm movement tray. MSRP on this is $39.99. Do you want to point out, The Walking Dead Call to Arms will release on the same day as Dune, August 24th. Continuing on in miniatures news, Warlord Games and Osprey Games are teaming to bring the bolt-action miniature system to a brand new war. That's right. They're bringing it to the Korean War, and here's the dope. Fought between 1950 and 1953, the Korean War was one of the first major conflicts of the Cold War. Backed by the Soviet Union and Communist China, the North Korean regime battled for control of the peninsula against the South Korean government and a 21-country United Nations task force. The Korean War is unique and interesting in the annals of world and military history in its own right. An aspect rarely discussed is the cultural implications of so many Western, non-Western, and European nations fighting against combatants from the Orient. Due to the vast cultural diversity of so many nations fighting in such a geographically small area, cultural differences would have a significant impact on how the combatants treated each other on the field of battle. These differences went beyond simple language barriers. They included problems in logistics, religion, personnel replacements, and the method in which war was conducted. Inside the book, you'll find a comprehensive history of the conflict with details of every major battle fought between the two sides. It also includes details of the various forces and their organization, commanders, and equipment. Scenarios are provided for many of the battles, along with comprehensive force selectors to help you assemble your force. A copy of the Bolt Action 2nd Edition rules will be needed to use this supplement. And don't forget, if you order directly from Warlord Games, you'll get a free exclusive miniature, Frozen Chosin. So pre-orders are open for the Korean War supplement right now. It does carry an MSRP of $32. There's also a Korean Army bundle, which I'm sharing an image of, and that's currently available for a pre-order sale price of $140. It's normally $165. And then on a somewhat bizarre side note, there is also a MASH unit, and these miniatures are based on the classic TV show. Pretty wild. Those are available for a pre-order price of $24.95, which actually seems like a really good deal because it's like 9 minis. So 9 minis for $24.95 it's a pretty sweet deal. Gotta point out, I like Bolt Action. I think Bolt Action makes for a very interesting kind of skirmish level World War II game. And I have not really delved into the 2nd edition. I did review the 1st edition and really liked it. Really liked it quite a lot. So I'm sure the 2nd edition hasn't changed that much. But it has been out for a while, I gotta admit. Warlord's usually at Gen Con. I'll have to see if I can see if Mike still works for them. He was kind of their U.S. contact that I met, about 7 years ago. So who knows? Maybe after Gen Con, I'll have some Bolt Action or Warlord Game stuff to share as well. Let's move on to some role-playing game news because John Wick's Wicked Fantasy is making its way to the Fate role-playing game system. And here's the dope on Wicked Fate from Magpie Games. The reign of men faces an age of change. Will it find a new path or fall to ruin? Wicked Fate is a fantasy adventure supplement that brings John Wick's Wicked Fantasy to the Fate core system. In 2013, John Wick reinvented 10 classic fantasy races through the world of Estivir, a unique Pathfinder setting that broke Kickstarter records and expanded what it meant to play elves, gnomes, kobolds, and more. After 5 years, Magpie Games is now ready to publish a full Fate core conversion for that world, allowing fans to explore Estivir using the award-winning Fate system. So wait a second, so if it came out in 2013, 5 years later makes it 2018. You guys need to kind of update your sell sheet info, guys. Wicked Fate gives you everything you need to play in the world of Estivir, including using Fate Core, obviously. There's a complete introduction to the world of Estivir, a land of conflict that offers players an opportunity to define the coming age. Fate Core templates for John Wick's reinvention of 10 fantasy races, including elves, dwarves, gnolls, kobolds, and more. Dozens of new aspects and stunts that bring the reimagined races to life in Fate Core beyond racial bonuses or feats. A modified skill list for fantasy adventuring in Estivir that includes Command, a new social skill for Fate Core. There's a new magic system for Fate Core that allows players to create custom effects on the fly without spell lists or mana pools. Of course, Wicked Fate does require the Fate Core rules to play. The 224-page book carries an MSRP of $29.99 if you want to grab the physical book, or you can get the PDF from DriveThruRPG for $13.99. For a 224-page PDF, that's a pretty good deal. My final news piece is for a 5e setting that really looks interesting, and it's from a company I am not familiar with. But Realm Storytellers have released what I think looks like a pretty cool Norse setting book for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It's in PDF, and I've got the dope. Svilland is a campaign setting based on the system of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It is a deep-down entertainment media of Scandinavian culture, especially the Viking Age. I do want to point out, I do believe that Realm Storytellers is a Turkish company, so the English might be a little wonky here. The realm itself is fiction, but all the assets of the game, politics, history, the pantheon, classes, magical items, and monsters, are inspired by the Norsemen and their old ways of living. Svilland is a Norse mythology-inspired D&D 5e campaign setting. It's designed to bring the valor, brutality, and drama from Norse tales to your role-playing games. The game is compatible with 5e, thus saying it's a 5e campaign setting, but its theme and dynamics are very different than your usual high fantasy game. Sure, there's magic in this realm, plenty of it even, yet it is given in a way that reflects omens, spirits, runes, and Norse deities with their true forms in the mythology. In Svilland, you will learn the true meaning of blood, magic, raids, and wrath of the gods. In the Svilland campaign setting, you'll find 9 deities from Norse mythology, 15 new cults and organizations, 6 new races, 2 new classes, 38 new archetypes, 100 new spells, 90 new items, and 31 new monsters. All of these aspects are well adapted to Norse mythology and will provide you with a grim, mystical experience of the Norse in your D&D games. You can score the 206-page PDF right now at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Sweet. I would have shared more images from this, but unfortunately the images that they have online, because they actually have some interior shots of the book, were really, really small. So when I kind of blew them up to try to put them into like the slides and that for the news, they looked awful. So I thought, well, I better not do that. So, do want to point out, mentioning DriveThruRPG, thegaminggang.com, and thus the Daily Dope are affiliates of the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit, say, DriveThruRPG or even Wargame Vault, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. DriveThruRPG banner is up top. The Wargame Vault banner is down below on the bottom of the page. Please click on one of our banners, and that way, if you do make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And it's a really small portion, but there are a lot of people who use those banners for me, and it's really, really appreciated because all those little nickels and dimes add up. And usually we'll pay for the hosting for the Gaming Gang on a monthly basis, so that's pretty sweet. All right, so strangely enough, it's quiet tonight. Nobody in chat. Nobody in chat's popping up. I'm sitting here kind of thinking, is the stream actually going live? I'm actually going to take a peek because it is, that's kind of unusual. normally we've got some folks in chat. Now, Friday was quiet, but I expected Friday to be quiet. So, let's see what we got. Make sure this is going. Well, I'll tell you what. There are people in chat, and we are not getting the chat. So, hey guys. Hey gang. Okay, give me a minute here. I'm going to restart my little chat client, because that happened one time before. That I was doing a show, and nothing was showing up in chat. There we go. Boom. Now everything's loading up. Happy Canada Day. Wow. Thanks. Good thing I noticed that, because, like I said, that was really, really weird. So we've got Dan from No Enemies here. Once again, Dan, thanks so much for sharing what was cooking on the Daily Dope this week. We've got Nefarious Coel. Let's see who else we've got. Okay, so it looks like we've got Nefarious and Dan hanging out. Although we have more people watching, I never pay attention to like what's going on YouTube. I don't even have that's why it took me a minute to see what was going on. I don't even have a browser window that's open that shows like what's going on with the stream. I figure I can see what's going on with the software I've got. But I did see we've got some folks watching live besides just Nefarious and Dan. So if you are watching live, say howdy. Although I do know there are a lot of people who do watch that are not on a desktop computer. And of course, if you're not on a desktop computer or laptop, you can't jump into chat. You can't jump into chat on the phone. You can't jump into chat on a tablet. It's just the way YouTube is set up. So anyway, cool. All right. So at least I'm not just talking to myself here. Yes, and Nefarious says snafu. Situation normal, all fouled up. Private snafu. I don't know if anybody out there has ever checked out. I would take a guess Dan's probably familiar with Private Snafu. Pretty wild cartoons. You can find a lot of them on YouTube. It was basically just a series of animated films that Warner Brothers did for the military, mainly the Army, and it was always like, don't be doing this, don't be doing that. And of course, Private Snafu is this dope who's voiced by Mel Blanc, who usually dies at the end of each cartoon from screwing up. So anyway, all right, what's coming up on the show this week? So this is a holiday shortened week, so I'm only doing 2 more shows. On tomorrow's show, I am going to unbox and take a first look at Ruby Combat Ready from Rooster Teeth and Arcane Wonders. So this is based on the show. It's got some minis in here. I am not familiar with the show. I'm not familiar with the game at all. But Tony over at Arcane Wonders was like, hey, man, check this out. You should definitely check this out. Yes, Dan says, well-drawn women. Yeah, because the Private Snafu cartoon was not made for like public consumption, unless you're talking about well-drawn women on the box here. So, don't know. So that's on tomorrow's show. Then on Wednesday's show, it's Wargame Wednesday. I will do a bit of a how to play and review the modern edition of Warfighter from Dan Versen Games. And this works extremely well as a solitaire game. Also works well as a multiplayer cooperative game too. So we will be diving into that. Do want to point out, I had some standalone videos that were just posted. I did my unboxing and first look at the D&D Essentials kit. So I posted that on up on the weekend because that showed up Friday. I also did an unboxing and first look at the Pathfinder Adventure card game, the new edition that just came out. And there's also a video for the first adventure path for that, Curse of the Crimson Throne. I gotta admit, I'm really impressed with the cards in the Pathfinder Adventure card game. There are loads of them, and there are hardly any sort of duplicates or anything like that. So pretty sweet. So I'm going to shoot some standalone videos as well. So it's not just because I'm going to have the 4th and 5th off this week. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to have anything else cooking. So I will be doing a review of Bushido from Gray Fox Games, as well as the Rising Rage expansion. Let's make sure I've got the box facing the right way. Then I will have a review of the Acquisitions Incorporated supplement, which is for 5th edition D&D from Penny Arcade and Wizards of the Coast. And then I will do a standalone review of the Call of Cthulhu starter set. That's right, from Chaosium Inc. So I will be posting those towards the end of the week, probably over the weekend as well. What's coming up on next week's shows? I already got everything planned for that too. So on Monday's show, I will be unboxing and taking a first look at Valparaiso, which is from my friends over at Stronghold Games. This was their Origins game release, but they sold out. So Stephen Bonacore wasn't able to get me a review copy there, so they did send me that. Then we're going to unbox and take a first look at Aeon's End on Tuesday of next week. This is from Indie Boards and Cards. This is a co-op fantasy deck building game, which I've heard some good stuff about. Then, on Wargame Wednesday, I am going to unbox and take a first look at 1754 Conquest, the French and Indian War. This is from Academy Games. I also have the special promo deck for the Native American Alliance. It's a little expansion. And Gunter asked me, Gunta, I should say, had asked me to do a review of this because this kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. It came out right at the same time that Vikings came out, and everybody was buying up Vikings, but they kind of ignored the 1754. And I loved 1812 Invasion of Canada. I thought that was a blast and super easy to teach people how to play. So then, next Thursday, I will be reviewing the Essentials kit for Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast. And if you check out the unboxing video, I'm really impressed by what's in this box. I really am. They really upped their game, and the component quality, especially the books that they've got. There's 2 books in the Essentials kit. There's even a little Dungeon Master screen. $25, pretty sweet. But they had to. I mean, really, they had to up their game, because look at what came out from Cubicle 7 for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Look at Call of Cthulhu. Even the new Shadowrun starter set. Well, a lot of good starter sets out there, so didn't want to get lost in the dust. And of course, I'm forgetting to mention the Starfinder beginner box. Really, really well done. So then, next Friday, not this coming Friday, but a week from Friday, I will review, and this is pretty heavy because I actually put the expansion cards in here already. I'll be reviewing Pathfinder, the adventure card game core set. And like I said, if you have not checked out my unboxing videos that just went up, the core set went up yesterday, and then the Adventure Path, Curse of the Crimson Throne, went up this morning. So definitely check them out. So, well, either nobody's saying anything in chat, or chat has dried up again. So let me close this, bring it back up, because it's about that time where Dan says, I got to get going. So let's see what we got. Let's see if this loads anything back up again. All right, so I'm just going to type out test. Okay, anyway, well, I'm glad I actually was able to see that there are people watching, because I was like, what's going on? Nobody's watching at all? Weird. Oh, another standalone video I'm going to do is, there you go, Nefarious says it's working. I'm going to actually take a look at the 3 kind of booster packs, the expansions for the 3rd edition Dawn of the Zed. So I will take a peek at these in a just standalone video. All right, so there we go. So chat is still working. All right, before I jump into my how to play and review of Sorcerer, let me point out, if you're not familiar with the Gaming Gang and the Daily Dope and the Gaming Gang channel, this is all pretty much a not-for-profit endeavor. So if you like the website, if you like the channel, if you like the shows and the videos, by all means, please consider making a small donation to Lil Bub's Big Fund and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. That's right, Lil Bub's Big Fund does provide grant monies to organizations around the United States who care for special needs animals who are awaiting adoption. They're awaiting adoption for, to go to their forever homes. So I am a big proponent of shelter animals. I have gotten, I don't know, like my last 6 pets from shelters. So it's just the kind of guy I am. So, of course, if you make a small donation, please shoot me an email. My email address is right down there in the corner, jeffmcaleer@thegaminggang.com. And by all means, just let me know, and I will give you a shout out on the following show if you would like. Because most people are like, yeah, I just want to let you know I made a donation, but I don't want you to share my name. It's like, okay, all right. I guess they don't want people to know that they watch this show. That might be it. So Dan is asking, what's the dope with Victory Point Games? Well, I know things that I should probably not share. But I think it's public knowledge that pretty much everybody from Victory Point Games is gone. Once they were acquired by, well, kind of it's like Game Salute, but it's not Game Salute now. It's called Tabletop Tycoon, which is kind of like the umbrella company. It's the umbrella company for Victory Point Games and Starling Games. There's another company that off the top of my head, I don't remember what that is. But as far as Victory Point Games goes, I think all we're going to see from here on out from Victory Point Games is probably just Dawn of the Zeds as well as Darkest Night. So, in fact, I don't know if this is positively the truth or a fact or something like that, but I did hear through kind of the rumor mill that Alan Emmerich's not even part of Victory Point Games anymore. So, yeah. So I don't think we're going to see the little company that could release much in the future. I don't know. Oh, that's right. Thanks, Nefarious. Yes, Nemo's War too. Yeah, Nemo's War does really well for them. So probably those 3 titles, and then maybe they'll release other stuff under the Victory Point Game banner, but I don't believe Alan Emmerich's going to have anything to do with it. Or Lance McMillan, or Nate Hansen, or any of a slew of different people who had worked for Victory Point Games. So kind of sorry to see that happen, but once again, I'm probably getting a little too inside baseball. I don't think Alan was doing too well health-wise. Because when I saw him at Gen Con last year, he did not look great. Looked very, very tired. And one thing, if you'd ever met Alan Emmerich, he's like super energetic and pumped. And if you'd never played a board game in your life, and you talk to Alan for about 5 minutes, you'd be like chomping at the bit. Nefarious says he expects they'll some of them will form a new company. I don't. Some folks that were hanging around Victory Point Games, I think were mainly hanging around because Alan kept them around. I'm not going to name any names, but there were some people there who were just in way over their heads, or they were designing stuff that was getting released that was just, no, who would buy that? I had heard from somebody who did some accounting for Victory Point Games, and there were some titles from some designers that were selling in the single digits all time, single digits. So yeah, so I don't think we're going to see a lot of folks starting their own game companies or teaming up, getting together to form their own game companies. I think those who are involved with Victory Point Games are probably just out of the industry now. Although, I mean, like Lance McMillan, he designed a lot of the Napoleon 20 stuff. I would think he's probably going to be doing some stuff. Of course, Frank Chadwick did that Thunder in the East for Victory Point Games, which I mean, if you have interest in that game, you should probably buy it now because I don't think that'll be reprinted again. So anyway, enough about Victory Point Games, because I know folks are tuning in because they want to check out Sorcerer from White Wizard Games. It's designed by Peter Schultz with help from Rob Doherty and Darwin Castle. Artwork and graphic design are provided by Jan Drenovic, Elena Kubikova, Vasek Pensik, I'm guessing on this, Peter Schultz, and Pavel Sirasik. The game is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. Plays in 13 and 90 minutes. It's going to depend on the number of players. And it does carry an MSRP of $44.99. So yes, Dan says that's sad to hear about VPG. Like I said, I can't tell you any of this is written in stone. This is just some stuff that I have heard, and well, I mean, I know for a fact that everybody at Victory Point Games was let go. I don't know for a fact that Alan Emmerich will not have anything to do with the company any longer. I don't know. That's just something I had heard. All right, so moving along, let's switch over to the other camera. So I've kind of got this set up, how you would basically be playing, at least your kind of side of the table, as far as Sorcerer. So Sorcerer is basically a game about dueling wizards. Yes, Dan's got to rock out. Good to see you, Dan. I will catch you later. So anyway, so the game is about dueling wizards. Now, it's for 2, 3, or 4 players. And I'm going to show you kind of the 2-player version of this, simply because the 3 and 4-player versions are very, very similar. So the first thing I'm going to point out, and I will zoom in and show off some of this stuff too. I will point out that the production quality of this is excellent. Everything involved with this is really, really nicely done. Now, granted, this isn't really big box. This is certainly a very big box for what we get that comes in the box. And I'm going to open this up a little bit. But there are expansions that are out, and there are more on the horizon. So the box actually has an insert here so that you've got plenty of room for the cards that, of course, came with the game, as well as the expansions that are out and that are on the horizon. So really nice insert here. Although I got to admit, these dividers don't fit all that great, but they're okay. I mean, they serve their purpose. I am surprised that we don't have some other dividers to break down the different characters and things like that. Not a huge deal, but just a little surprised. So we've got this really, really nice insert for the box. We've got the player boards, which are very cool. Really sturdy. And there's 2 sides to them, which the reality is there's really no difference between them. One is kind of an Egyptian motif, and the other is just kind of like a magician's. And of course, you're all evil sorcerers, so I could point that out for you. There are no good guys or gals in this game. So you got 4 of these player boards, and I will zoom in and we will tour the player board as well. So you've got 4 of those. You got the rule book, which is really nicely laid out. Explains everything pretty well. One thing that I would have liked to have seen is a bit more of an explanation of the characters, the domains, as well as their lineage. So effectively what you do is you take 3 decks of cards and you mash them up together, just like in Smash Up. Hey, Kabuki Kid's dropped in. Dan leaves and Kabuki Kid comes in. Hey, maybe Dan from No Enemies Here is really Kabuki Kid. Huh. I don't know if we've seen the two of them in chat at the same... Yes, we have. I'm kidding. Anyway, like I said, I was a little surprised that we did not get to see a bit more info about the characters themselves, because there's 4 characters, there's 4 lineages, and there's 4 domains. And each of those decks are going to be something a little bit different. So it would have been easier to kind of get a grasp of the characters and their powers and stuff like that if we had had a little bit more info in the rulebook itself. Like I said, nothing. I'm not going to like really ding the game because it doesn't do it. It's just, it would have been kind of cool where it's like, okay, by looking at the cards, you kind of start to get the idea of what some of the characters and some of the lineages actually do. But then some others, you actually have to kind of play the game with those cards to understand what's going on. So I'm going to move the Sorcerer box out of the way. I'm going to kind of take a high-level view of what's set up here. And now I'll zoom in, and I will show off some of the cards, talk about the player board itself, show off... I'll kind of break this apart a little bit, show off the battleground. So first off, we do have standees. Like I said, we've got 4 different characters. So we've got 4 different standees, which I will show those a little closer up when I zoom in. So each of those represents one of the sorcerers. Then we have, in a 2-player game, you're battling over 3 battlefields. And this is supposed to be Victorian era London. So you've got Whitechapel, you've got Old London, and you've got Southwark. Doesn't really, the battlefields don't really mean anything. They're just 3 different locations. Although it is kind of funny because what you're trying to do is you're trying to control 2 of the 3 in the 2-player game. I get a kick out of the artwork on the back once you've taken over it. It's like burned out and kind of destroyed. So Nefarious says, Victorian London, right-o, governor. So I like once again, it's just kind of like a little added nugget to the game production-wise that I thought, wow, that's really cool. That's really nicely done. So anyway, so we've got these cubes. We're going to use these cubes to actually track the damage that we're dealing to our opponent. So we've got damage tracker on our side. They've got a damage tracker on their side. Once one of the sides has taken 12 points of damage, then you're going to flip it on over to its common, controlled side, I guess we'll say. I don't want to say destroyed side, but... And then, for an example, if I had taken that over, I would mark it with my cube on my side, and if my opponent had taken it over, they would just mark it on their side. So that is how we track what's going on the battlefields. Now, our sorcerers will also be located on the battlefields as well. Gotta be really honest, while I really do think this is a really nicely done game and I really enjoy the game, it's not as if it's reinventing the wheel by any stretch. So it's got a bit of a Magic the Gathering feel to it. It's got quite a bit of a kind of a smash up feel to it because it's got that shuffle building aspect to your decks. Whereas smash up is you're taking 2 20-card decks and combining them. In this, you're taking 3 decks, 2 are 10 cards, 1 is 20 cards, and you're smashing those together. So although it's not as if, like I said, this isn't in reinventing the wheel, all these pieces together work really well. So it's not as if every single good game has to have something remarkably different. But as far as I mentioned, it's got a kind of a Magic the Gathering kind of vibe to it. One way it is different than Magic is you can't actually harm the other sorcerers. You're battling against their minions, sorceries. You're trying to damage their the different areas of London so you can take over. But there's no way for you to actually wipe out the other sorcerer. So you're not tracking damage for your sorcerer. Your focus is on the battlefields and defeating the minions that your opponent brings out. Now, the reason why we've got these standees for the sorcerers is because you'll be able to move around the battlefields because there are abilities or spells or actions that you can take, but they only will affect the battlefield that the sorcerer is at. Same thing happens for a lot of the minions and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's that area up here. We've got the various different decks. Now, I have this kind of broken up because I'm going to put together a deck real quick. And I will zoom in on this to kind of give you an idea. I'm going to move this out of the way. So, the first deck we have is the character deck. And there are 4 characters. And you're actually going to take the top card, the Misselda card, the character info card, I guess we'll say. And you're going to actually keep this off to the side. You're going to have it in front of you in play at all times. So you'll see we've got little cross swords. It says action. It says exhaust this skill card to exhaust a non-legend enemy minion with a cost of 4 or less. If there is not one to exhaust, gain 3 energy instead. So what you would actually do, it's got that cross, so that means that action can only take place in a battlefield that Misselda is on. That's what these little cross swords mean. You'll see that on the minions as well. You'll also see that each of the cards will have an icon in the lower corner. So this shows what deck it's from. So we look at Misselda's deck, and we get her different cards for her character. So to give you a breakdown of the cards themselves, you're going to see that's going to be the cost in energy to cast the spell. We'll also see, do we get what's known as an omen, which is this little token here. I'll talk about omens in a bit. It tells us what this is, and it says, search your grimoire, which is your deck. Shuffle afterwards for a minion and play it, paying its cost. If it is a minion for the character, here, you may return an attachment from your graveyard to your hand. So we've got Deep Madness. So this is an attachment card. So it says the attached minion's text box is blank. This ability cannot be blanked. So some of these will actually be attached to a minion. This is a minion. This is a big bad minion. So this costs you 9 energy to cast, and you have anywhere from 0 to 10 energy. So that's going to be its attack strength, and that's going to be, they call it the essence, but it's basically their hit points. So when you're battling, that's the number of dice you're going to roll for this attack, and when it's attacked, then that's the number of hits that it can take. And there are tokens that you use to show that that these have taken damage. So there's a good number of tokens. So there's like 60 some of these tokens, and they're either omens or they're wounds. So kind of give you an idea. Here we got another minion. She's not as powerful, but you'll see there's some of these will say when it's played, you get to do something. Some of these will have like an ongoing effect. Says when played, exhaust a non-legend enemy minion. So various different stuff. Now, one thing I will point out too is that I wish there were fewer duplicates of cards. When all told, when you take your decks and you put your decks together, you'll end up with 40 cards. But out of those 40 cards, you've really got about 15 different cards, maybe 17 different cards, because there are duplicates. Now, that being said, that's not unusual. I would have just liked to have seen a little more variety. Now, as we're looking at these cards, you can see right away, the artwork is really nice. It's really cool artwork. I really dig the artwork. I will point out, it is very dark. It is dark. Because remember, these are evil sorcerers. So we've got a vampire, we've got a demonologist, we've got an animist, which is like spider creatures and stuff like that. So a good variety of different stuff. I'm not showing off the vampire, but if you do play the vampire character, the Bloodlord, then you actually get this special card, which is something else that you're tracking. It's a blood pool for some extra special actions that or tactics that you can do. So anyway, so we've got we'll have some tactic cards as well. Now, tell you what, let's take a look at the demonologist. So we've got the character deck. Now let's say we're going to take the demonologist as the lineage. Now this is a 20 card deck. So once again, this is going to be a card that we keep out in play. So an ongoing effect, whenever you play a demon minion, you may exhaust this skill card to put 2 flame counters on a non-legend enemy minion, which flame counters cause damage. So kind of give you an idea. Here's some of these. So these are minions. That is not Asmodeus or Asmodeus. All depends on how you like to pronounce it. So we've got the various different cards here. So here, for an example, this is a tactic. So put a flame counter on an enemy minion that does not already have one. So when you play, some sorceries will be like a one and done. Some are tactic cards, and they will stay out. They will stay out in play. All depends on what the card is. So just kind of zipping through a little bit here. So this would be the lineage deck. Then you have the domain. So where is this character from? What does this character kind of represent? So here we've got of the Forgotten Temple. So this is a tactic card. This will stay out. This will stay out and play. So then we've got some more minions. The Purifying Widow. The Knight Templar. The Knight Regent. The Venerable Seneschal. So some of these will also show that they're a legendary card. So there's some restrictions on legendary cards. Okay, so what we would do is we would take the lineage card, we take the character card, we take the domain card. These we would actually put by our player board because these would actually stay in play. So we have these available to us at all times. Then we're going to take those 40 cards and we would shuffle them all up. Which of course I'm not going to end up doing a great job of shuffling, but still. And I will point out, these cards have a nice linen finish. Nice stock as well on the cards. These aren't real cheapo, thin cards. Of course, you'll want to sleeve them. Especially because you know you're going to be doing kind of a smash up with the 3 decks all the time. So then you would have your deck. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Because then we're going to take a look here at the player board. Just going to zoom out a little bit so we still get a nice good look at the player board here. So what you would end up doing is move these off to the side. You would probably take your cards and just run them along the side of your player board. Or you can put them down here if you want, underneath. It's completely up to you, but you're going to always have your character, your lineage, and your domain in front of you. So then you're going to take your deck and put your deck right here. So that's where your deck goes. This is your grimoire. This is your graveyard, so it's basically your discard pile. We got this big 8-sided die, which effectively you have a choice when you decide, you and your opponent can decide together. Do you want to just automatically get 4 energy every time, every turn, or do you want to roll the 8-sided die? So you'll have, this is a first player marker. So one of the players will be the first player. The first player can roll the 8-sided die. That's how much energy you'll get. Or you can decide, well, every time we get energy, we get 4. Personally, I like using the 8-sided die, because then it's like, all right, I'm planning on doing something, and then it's like, oh no, we only get 1 energy. So, although there are different ways for you to get energy as well. I'm going to scoot this over a little bit because I'm kind of blocking it. All right, so this is your first player token here, and it's going to switch back and forth between the players. You can utilize this. You can use it once during your turn to re-roll all your dice, because we got a bunch of these dice. Which I'll talk about the dice in a sec, because these dice are used when we start battling. So, and when it goes over to the other player, then it's back in use. So, effectively, you need to use this every time you got it. During the battle phase, you're going to use this. Otherwise, okay. I should point out, you can re-roll your own dice or make your opponent re-roll their dice. So, unless your opponent has like really terrible dice rolls, then yeah, you're not going to utilize it. But for the most part, you're pretty much going to use it almost all the time. You're going to use this area here to store your omens. You get a new omen every turn. You're going to stockpile these. Omens allow you to re-roll 1 die, either of your own or the opponent, when the opponent rolls dice. So these, you burn through these pretty quick, but there are cards that will allow you to get more omens as well. Then we have the action tracker. So each turn, each of the players can have up to 6 actions. So the first player would go first, they take an action, their opponent takes an action, then it's my turn to take an action again, and just go track through down there. Then you got your energy. So anywhere from no energy to 10. So you're going to track that as well. And remember, you're spending energy on these cards. This is the energy cost to cast these, to bring in minions, to cast spells, to utilize tactics. So, and you're going to start off, each of the players are going to draw 6 cards, which I'm sure these aren't going to be very well shuffled. And that's what you'll have available to you. You don't automatically draw new cards every turn. So, I'm going to skip the ready phase, because you really don't do the ready phase when you first start the game. But I will talk about that in a sec. So as far as actions. So, you can spend an action, ka-ching, right? To channel energy. So you gain 2 energy. You can meditate. Use an action to meditate. You get to draw 2 cards. You can cast a spell. That's playing a card. So you play the card, and of course you're paying the energy cost to do so. You can activate a power. So anything that says an action, you can utilize. So for an example, right here on the character card itself, that is an action. You can reinforce, which means you can move one of your minions or swap 2 of your minions to adjacent battlefields. So I will show you when I'm done showing you the board here, the battlefield itself. So those are the actions that you can do. Then we move to a battle phase, which is when your minions will be battling on the battlefields. So, so for an example, I'm going to show you this. I'll explain exhausting. So exhausting is basically, I know they can't say this, I can say this because it's copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast, but so you basically tap, or if you want to tap it like that, tap a card that's utilizing their action, tactic, what have you. That's exhausting the card. So of course, when you start a new turn, you're going to ready all of your exhausted cards. So you're gonna make those available to you once again. Like I said, you roll the energy die. Everybody sets their action trackers back to 6, and you move your avatar to any of the battlefields. So that's the ready phase. And like I said, you're going to do that once you already get through your first turn. So it's kind of it's like a reset. It's almost, it's funny because it's actually in the beginning of the turn, but it's almost like a maintenance or cleanup phase, which normally happens kind of at the end of a turn. But anyway, all right, so we've seen how the player board looks. So let's bring down the battlefield as an example, and I'll show you what goes on with the battles. So let's say, for an example, let's get something else that's kind of little. Something that's not too exciting. There we go. Okay. So I've got a couple of minions on this battlefield. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I'm going to put a couple of minions on this other side too. Just do it from the Bloodlord. Okay, so let's say it's like this. Now you can only have 4 minions total on each side of the battlefield. So one thing I will mention is that once a battlefield is controlled, you can still have minions. You can still bring in minions. And what that allows you to do is you can actually keep reinforcements kind of in line and ready to jump in. So what'll happen is once you get into the battle portion, the battle phase of the game, you're going to make your attacks. So it's kind of interesting because the first player will actually go second on 2 of the battlefields and go first on only 1 of the battlefields. So it's kind of interesting how it works that way, because just being the first player in the turn isn't necessarily that huge a deal. So let's say, for an example, I'm attacking. So I've got my Knight Templar. So I've got a 3. So I'd be rolling 3 attack dice. The attack dice will either have a blank, 1 hit, 2 hits, or a critical hit. So those are the 4 faces that are on these dice. So these hits, basically, your opponent gets to assign these hits. So if I were to have rolled those, that basically means that they get to take 3 hits, but maybe they could give, if they want to give the hits to the minion, they can do that. Maybe they want to give the hits to the battlefield itself. A lot of times what you'll do is you'll actually take hits to the battlefield so that you keep your minions around so you get a chance to attack back. So as an example here, we also have the blank, so of course that's going to do nothing. Now the pentagram, the star, is actually a hit, but it's a hit that the attacker gets to assign where that damage goes. Now if there was nobody here, if this is an undefended battlefield, this actually would count for 2 hits to the battlefield. So let's kind of give you an example here. So we've got 5 dice. So let's say we got to attack first. So there we go. We've got a pentagram and 3 hits. So all told, we've got 4 hits. Now, I've rolled those dice. I had 2 blanks. I could, if I wanted to, spend omens to re-roll these if I wanted on a 1-for-1 basis. I could decide I want to use my fate token and flip that over and re-roll as many dice as I want. I could re-roll both of these or maybe all 3 of these. So that's my choice. I can do that. So let's say, as an example, I say, no, that's good. I'm cool. Well, now my opponent has the opportunity to spend their omens to make me re-roll dice. So they may say, oh, you know what? Here, I'm going to spend this and make you re-roll this. Well, look, that worked out for them because that's 1 hit less. And then we kind of just go back and forth until we both pass on not trying to manipulate any of the dice. So let's say, as an example, that no one decided to spend any omens. So I would have 3 hits as well as the critical hit. So these 3 points, my opponent says, well, you know what? I'll take all 3 hits to my minion. Now, one thing I do want to point out, something else that's different than, say, Magic the Gathering or a lot of other collectible card games or trading card games, is the fact that this damage carries over. So it's not one of these systems where it's like, oh, well, all damage is gone. You got to destroy them in that 1 round when you attack. Nope. This damage does carry over. So you can, even the big baddies, you can kind of whittle away as far as you're playing. So let's say they say, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to take those 3 hits to that, and I get to assign a hit. So I decide, well, their essence is 4, their hit points are 4. I can say, okay, cool. Boom. There's the 4th hit. Goodbye. Now, anyone who is smart and knows that I've already got the opportunity to assign a hit would have said, oh, okay, well, you know what? I'll take 2 hits here, and then I'll take 1 hit here. Because then I can't knock them out with that 3rd hit, so they would get a chance to attack me back. So your minions are effectively kind of like blockers. They're there to soak damage to prevent damage going to the battlefield. That's pretty much how it works. You also have the various different actions. You've got tactics. There are no instants. There's no interruptions. There are really no kind of surprises that you can whip out of your hand and be like, oh, well, I'm playing this card that does this and completely screws you over. Ha ha! That is not part of the game. So as far as like strategies and pulling like a whammy on your opponent, that is not a strategy. Because pretty much everything that you're going to be playing against in the battle mode is already going to be out on the table. It's going to be in view. Everybody can see it. So for an example here, I'd have said, okay, well, fine. I will actually do another hit to their side. And then my opponent has a pretty tough minion there who gets to roll 5 dice. They would have 3 hits. So I could either say, well, okay, with those 3 hits, I'll just lose these minions here. I mean, they're weak minions anyway. They're not that great. Or I could say, well, I'll take 1 hit to this guy because he does give me 3 attack dice. Do 1 hit to this minion, so they're dead. And that would leave me with 1 hit. And I would say, okay, well, I'll put that hit to the battlefield. And you do this with each of the battlefields. So whatever minions you've got at a battlefield, you'll be rolling your dice. Now, of course, keeping in mind, they got the 3 hits on me. I could have used omens to make them re-roll dice. or used the fate token, the first player token, make them re-roll dice. But do I really want to? I mean, they're just single hits. I would say, nah, just take the damage. So you'll continue doing this, attacking through minions, using sorceries, using actions, but the vast majority of it is battling with the minions against each other, trying to do damage to the battlefields. You'll do this until you've taken control of 2 of the 3 battlefields, at least in the 2-player game. There's if you have like more expansions, or if you have another copy of the game, of course, you can actually play up to 6 players. So you're basically kind of doing allies. You're allying yourself with some of the other wizards. So pretty cool. There's actually an extra battleground as well. It's the Underground Hive, which is kind of cool. I believe there's also there's another expansion where it's like Egyptian battlefields, because if you remember, I will flip this over and show you the back again. If you remember, that's got kind of an Egyptian vibe to it, to this player board here. Like I said, there's no difference between the boards. It's just artistic style. But once again, I thought that was kind of cool. They went the extra mile. This could have just been blank, and this could have been like, there you go, all yours. Since I am zoomed in a little bit, I'll show you I'll zoom back in just a touch. I will show you the avatars. So this was Niselda, the sorcerer that I was just using in our examples here. So this guy is kind of like a demon. This guy is almost, to me, it's like, I don't know, for some strange reason, because of the Spider-Man comics way back in the day, and I swear it was like Marvel Team Up, and it was Spider-Man and the Scarlet Witch, and they were back in time, and they were battling Cotton Mather, because of course Scarlet Witch is a witch. For some reason, I just want to say that's like Cotton Mather, although Cotton Mather wasn't like a witch hunter, like killer or anything like that, and he certainly wasn't a sorcerer, but still. So we've got that, and then we also have this kind of bizarre, like all these arms coming out of his cloak. So, like I said, the artwork is really, really well done. Really nicely done. So, in essence, that is pretty much how you play Sorcerer. So, what do I think? Well, I have to be honest. Let me talk about the positives, and then I don't have any real strong negatives, but there are a few things that I do want to mention. So, as I pointed out, production quality, top notch, really, really good. I mean, it's fantastic. It really is. From the player board to the card stock, the linen finish, the artwork's really cool. Although I do want to point out, if you are kind of sensitive about like demonic things and blood, because there are vampires in this as well. I didn't show off all the cards. You might shy away from it because it is creepy, dark, horror artwork. So, but I mean, to me, it just kind of like really expands the mood. Plus, if you don't like spiders, so if you were my best friend Elliot Miller, you may not necessarily want to utilize this lineage because it's a bunch of spider stuff. So production quality excellent, artwork's excellent, gameplay itself. First of all, it's super easy to learn how to play. All you got to do is read what the cards do. It's not like you've got to sit there and you got to memorize different combos and make sure, well, if I get this card with this card and this card, oh, I can blow the doors off. No, it's nothing like that. It's all pretty straightforward as far as the gameplay goes. Each turn is kind of broken up into two sections, right? So you've got kind of like the cleanup, the maintenance to start off with, and then you've got like the setup, you're setting up, your blockers at the battlefield. You're setting up your attacks. You're trying to take advantage of, if the other player doesn't have any minions at a battlefield, try to jump on that and get as many attacks in, hopefully to damage that battlefield right away. So, and then the fact that you're going back and forth, like I get to take an action, you get to take an action, I get to take an action, you get to take an action, works out really nicely. I like that. It's not like, oh, well, I get to spend so many action points doing this stuff, and then the other player has to respond, or they get to do a bunch of stuff, and then I have to respond. It's not necessarily an I go, you go kind of thing. It's just one action. And sometimes, you need energy. So your action is like, okay, I'm getting energy. I'm not even playing a card. I like the fact that you don't just draw cards, that you do have to spend an action to be able to draw cards. So you got the setup, and then you've got the battle. Gotta admit, the battle can kind of drag a little bit, especially with more than 2 players. With 2 players, the game does rock pretty quickly, especially once you get a hang of what you're doing. Yes, of course, you're going to have to read the cards and figure out what the cards do, especially with some of the actions that are available to them. But for the most part, it's pretty simple to get stuck in on it as well. But the kind of back and forth with, okay, well, I'm going to spend an omen and make you re-roll that. And then it's like, okay. And then it's like, well, I'm going to spend an omen and I'm going to re-roll this. And it kind of goes back and forth until somebody passes. If you got a bunch of omens, and you don't stock them up that quickly, but it is possible for you to have a bunch of omens, it can kind of drag on with like, okay, well, I'm spending another one, make you re-roll this. I would almost be tempted to say, hey, you know what? Maximum number of omens that can be spent is 1 per player or 2 per player, something like that. And then that would kind of quicken up the whole battlefield phase, the battle phase. But other than that, I really do like the game. I do think it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Like I said, we've seen a lot of this stuff before, but the sum is actually, I would say, more impressive than the pieces that are put together for it. As far as people that this game might not be for, if you're not into like trading card games or collectible card games or card games in general, probably not going to dig this. If you do not like chucking dice, I do want to point out, you're not going to like this. If you don't like luck in your games, obviously you wouldn't be playing anything with cards and dice in the first place. But I do want to point out, if the element of luck bothers you, then you don't want to play this game, because there's a lot of luck involved. Not necessarily just with the cards you're able to draw, but the rolling the dice. Because you can get into a period where you're just rolling crap, and your opponent just seems to be rocking and rolling with great rolls. It happens. They're dice. So if you're going to really get butt hurt over bad die rolls, probably not going to be your kind of game. So, other than that, though, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I don't mind luck. I like chaos in my games. Now, I can blame bad dice rather than bad strategy, right? You could do that a lot. So, all in all, on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Sorcerer a very, very solid 8.4 out of 10. Dinged it a little bit because it is not that radically different. And the battle phase can kind of drag a little bit, especially if you're playing with more than 2 players. But other than that, I was very pleasantly surprised. I'll be very honest. I was very pleasantly surprised by Sorcerer. I was expecting it to be interesting. I didn't expect it to be as engaging as it is. Oh, one other thing that I wish there were just more cards. I wish there were, more lineages, more characters. And because if you think about it, altogether, there's about 160 cards in the game. That's not a ton of cards. But hopefully I'll have an opportunity to check out some of the expansions that are out there or on the horizon for Sorcerer. As I mentioned before, Sorcerer is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 30 to 90 minutes, and it does carry an MSRP of $44.99. I have seen it as low as about $32 at online retailers. So if that's important, if saving a few bucks like that is important, check out online retailers. Otherwise, go to your friendly local game store or go to the White Wizard Games website. All right, so that is it for tonight's show. Pretty long show, a little longer than usual, right? So I do want to point out on tomorrow's show, let me grab it because I got stuff stacked up on top of it. I am going to be unboxing and taking a first look at Ruby Combat Ready from Rooster Teeth and Arcane Wonders. So that is it for tonight's show. As I like to point out, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Those of you in chat, thanks for hanging out with me. And it was very bizarre how I didn't see the chat on my side until I reloaded my little client. So I'm glad I did that. Otherwise, I would have sat here thinking nobody's watching. I'd be like, this is weird. Why is no one watching tonight? But everybody, if you watched live, thank you very much. If you didn't jump into chat, why not? We don't bite. We're pretty friendly. And of course, if you watch this after the stream, I love the fact that you tune in as well. So until tomorrow, thanks for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.